In today's episode, we wanted to experiment a little bit with the format that we usually go with. Instead of going with the typical 2 to 3 big stories for the day, we decided to talk about one hard hitting big story of the day, but with multiple angles to consider. Now, this allows us to not just go one level deeper than traditional news channels, but actually 2 levels deeper and also do more justice to the story that we are talking about. Now, of course, this is a very big experiment for us, so please do let us know in the comments whatever you think about it, and we will adjust it accordingly. Welcome to the Daily Brief Show by Zerodha, where our aim is to cut through the noise and simplify the biggest news and stories in the financial markets in a way that is very easy to understand, yet a few levels deeper as compared to our traditional news channels. I'm your host Anurag Bansal, and today is Friday, the 10th of January. In today's story, I want to talk about migration. For those of you who are new to this word, migration simply means people moving from one place to another, and it is usually in the quest of finding a better life. Now, migration could be within one's own country or also across international borders in some cases. Now, in India, migration has become a huge conversation topic because the numbers are changing in many unexpected ways. Now, fewer Indians are leaving their villages for big cities than they have ever done so before. And at the same time, more Indians than ever are moving abroad and they are sending back large amounts of money to their families in India. Now, whenever most people try and understand why would someone even pick up their entire life and move places, they usually talk about push and pull factors. Now, push factors are usually the things that make a person want to leave their house. This could be the lack of jobs, low wages, or even poor living conditions. And pull factors are the things that make a person want to arrive somewhere new, like the promise of higher pay, better jobs, or the hope for a nicer life. Now, in the Indian context specifically, this push and pull factor for domestic migration used to be very strong. Many people from villages saw cities as places where they could earn much better money and also escape disguised unemployment on farms. Also, by the way, disguised unemployment in very simple terms means having too many workers in one place so that some of them aren't really doing anything productive at the end of the day. Now, until very recently, it looked like a lot of people were leaving rural areas for cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, etc. But the thing is, new data from the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister says that over the last 10 years or so, the total number of people who are migrating within India has actually dropped. Now, the share of migrants in the total population was about 37.6% in 2011, and now it is about 28.8%. And more importantly, the number of people who specifically move for work has gone down from about 4.5 crore in 2011 to around 4 crore people in 2023. And this means that in spite of India's working population growing by about 20% during this period, fewer people are actually packing their bags and moving to other parts of the country in the hope for better jobs. So the question here is, why exactly is it happening? See, one view is that rural areas have improved in terms of access to education, healthcare, infrastructure, and even economic opportunities. So maybe people don't quite feel the need to leave their homes for a job in these cities anymore at all. But another view here is that it's not that rural areas have transformed into booming economic hubs. Rather, it's actually possible that Indian cities are not expanding or creating jobs the way people actually hoped for. There are also signs like lower remittances from city workers to their villages and also a dip in unreserved train ticket purchases, which all suggest that labor mobility within India might have actually slowed down quite a bit. Now, interestingly, the story of states within India shows that 5 states, which is Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, and West Bengal, all together contribute nearly half of all migrants who move out. And these same states plus Tamil Nadu also see the highest number of people who are moving in. But still, overall, the flow of people across Indian cities and states seem to be cooling off quite a bit now. But while domestic migration seems to be slowing down, international migration from India is at an all-time high right now. India sends out more migrant workers worldwide than any other country in the world, and we receive the highest amount of remittances, which is, by the way, the money that is sent back home from people who are working abroad. And to give you context of how big that number is, in 2024, Indians who were abroad sent back a record 129.1 billion US dollars, and that is about 14.3% of all the remittances across the world. So you can imagine how much money that is. Now, you might question, why are Indians who are living abroad actually sending so much money back? See, a major reason here is that Indian migrants can earn a lot more money overseas. Sometimes moving to the United Arab Emirates or the UAE could easily almost triple their income straight away. And if they go to the United States, they might also earn 5 times more by doing almost the exact same work. Now, these people basically send a part of their earnings back home in order to help their families to cover daily expenses or even to make important investments in the country. And for them, it makes sense because, as compared to waiting for multiple decades for our Indian economy to reach the same levels as the other countries, moving abroad seems a quicker way for many people to earn more money. And there's probably nothing wrong in that, in a manner of speaking. But what is important to note for all of us here is that these large remittances that I'm talking about only make up about 3.3% of India's overall GDP. And this is not as high as that the case in some smaller countries. For places like Tajikistan, Lebanon, or some Central American nations, money from workers abroad makes up a much bigger share of their economies. India, meanwhile, on the other hand, has a more diverse economy and is much, much larger, so therefore remittances form a much smaller piece of the pie. But the thing is, even if they are not as big when measured as a percentage, these inflows still amount to a massive sum of money which helps millions and millions of Indian families. Also, apart from money, these overseas migrants can also benefit India in multiple ways when they eventually return back. And yes, a lot of them do eventually return back to India. Now, they return with new skills, knowledge, and also savings, which they can invest in homes, businesses, or even new industries in our country. One of the best examples of this is how Indian professionals in the Silicon Valley have fueled India's technology boom in a certain way. Long ago, many Indians went to the United States to study and work in tech companies. Some of them, of course, returned with ideas, experience, and a lot of funds to start technology firms in places like Bangalore. Back in 2006, it was observed that about 90% of Bangalore's new IT companies were founded by people who had lived or worked in the US in the past. But today we can see a very, very different picture for domestic and international migration. The push factors for Indian cities are not as strong as they once used to be because Indian cities are not creating enough good jobs to attract large number of new workers in the first place. For international migration, the difference in wages between India and countries like the US or UAE remains massive. So therefore, Indians see overseas jobs as much more attractive than jobs in India. And that is why fewer people are actually moving around within our country, while actually more people are moving abroad than they were ever before. Now, naturally, whatever I've spoken about till now are the challenges. Migrants, whether they are in India or overseas, can face very difficult working conditions. In some cases, they also get lower pay than what they are promised, and they also face a lot of discrimination in a lot of cases. There are also cases of xenophobia, which for your context is the fear of foreigners. Also, in addition to this, there could be families that are separated for multiple years, which could eventually cause social stress for them. And some more reality checks include the fact that rural regions can lose some of their most energetic and educated young people who leave farms and villages for better opportunities to develop their own selves. But on the other side, the places that receive these migrants can actually become overcrowded on the other hand, and that could create worries about job competition and even cause social unrest as a whole. And therefore, as a result of this, many countries across the world are now tightening their migration policies. Political debates, economic pressures, and even the fear of social change can cause some governments to restrict the number of people who are entering their own country. But at the same time, we all know now that migration can be good for innovation and the global economy as a whole because it spreads ideas, fills labor gaps, and overall brings people together. And our country, India, which is a major source of international migrants and also a home to many internal migrants, stands at crossroads in a manner of speaking. We want people to keep moving within the country for new opportunities, but for that, Indian cities need to be more vibrant and welcoming for job seekers. And at the same time, India must protect its citizens who are living abroad to make sure that they are treated fairly and not quite exploited in a way. Because like I just said, the money and the knowledge that these migrant workers can bring back to India when they return can really help our country grow. But that will only happen if our country starts to strongly support those people who migrate and those people who also choose to stay behind. And that is the story of India's migration. Let's now quickly move on and talk about the quick news stories. First, United Breweries has stopped supplying beer to the Telangana Beverages Corporation, and they said that they are losing money because prices have not gone up in a long time because of unpaid debts. The company adds about 4,500 crore rupees every single year to the state's revenue, and they believe that it cannot continue unless they can charge more money. Now, a review panel is currently looking into their request, and the company's stock price has fallen by around 4%. Second, India's trade deficit for the month of November 2024 has been lowered from 37.8 billion US dollars to 32.8 billion US dollars after the $5 billion mistake was found in gold imports data. It turned out that some gold imports were counted twice, so they now have been adjusted to $9.8 billion. Also, in spite of this correction, India's exports from April to November have still risen by 7.6% and have reached 536 billion US dollars. Third, BP PLC has joined forces with ONGC in order to boost the output of oil and gas in Mumbai high fields. Their aim is to increase crude oil production by about 44% and natural gas output by 89% over the next 10 years or so. Now, this move could reverse the long-term decline in production and could help India reduce its heavy reliance on imported energy, which could therefore strengthen our country's energy security. Well, that's all the news and stories I had for you today. I hope you enjoyed this episode and maybe learned something new from it today. Like I said in the beginning, please do give us feedback on this new format of the show and whether you like this one or the previous one, and we'd love to interact with you in the comment section below. As usual, this is your host Anurag Bansal signing off. Take care, and I will see you in the next episode. Disclaimer: this content is for informational purposes only. None of the stocks, brands, or products mentioned are recommendations or endorsements.